This is historic. We have never, as far as I know, had a black congressperson in leadership.
He's the first black lawmaker in either party to lead in Congress. So it is quite a historic moment. It's also a big moment for Democrats because in addition to that, he is, sort of turning over into a new generation. He's 52 years old. The Democratic leadership has been, famously elderly at this point.
And something like 30 years younger than Steny Hoyer or Nancy Pelosi, I think.
That's right. And so it is, Nancy Pelosi and her team have run the caucus for 20 years now. So this is a big shift for Democrats. And the interesting thing to me was it wasn't much of a fight. It was really more of a coronation as it was described in one of the pieces on the Bloomberg today. And I think that's an apt description of what happened.
I think it was by unanimous consent. They didn't even have a vote. They just all say they declared it. So talk about that. There's a lot of challenges that we should talk about for Mr. Jeffries. At the same time, the transition from a distance at least looks pretty smooth. They have Nancy Pelosi go on the floor, make her sort of goodbye speech as leader, and then there was no real contention about the replacement. They had the team in place to come in.
They did. It was awfully smooth. And unfortunately for Hakeem Jeffries, I don't think it's going to continue to be as smooth going forward because he's got an awful lot to contend with. He's going to be taking over, and the new Progressive Caucus, of which he is a member in name at least, and describes himself as a progressive, is, I think, 103, 106 members in the new Congress, the biggest caucus or the biggest progressive caucus we've seen. And he has famously, butted heads to a certain extent with his neighbor, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on many occasions, and other members of the caucus, including Barbara Lee from California, who he narrowly and surprisingly beat out for leadership, a few years ago when he ascended into leadership. So you've got some progressive suspicion about Hakeem Jeffries going into this.
Well, and perhaps underscoring the possible challenges for him, we then have David Cicilline come forward today, out of, as far as I know, nowhere, saying, I'd like to challenge Jim Clyburn for assistant leader because we need an LGBTQ plus person.
Yeah, this was a stunning turn because, this is something, Jim Clyburn is something of an institution in Congress. He's beloved. He, certainly brings his own diversity, his own history to the leadership there. And to hear Cicilline come out and say he's going to challenge him to bring in more diversity from the LGBTQ plus community is something of, the biggest stunner we've had on the Democratic side in a while. I'm not convinced it's going to go very far at this point, but I do think it speaks to the fact that Democrats are a very young party. And this is something we don't talk about a lot because leadership has been older. But in this last election, they lost every age group over 45. Wow. And this is going to be a challenge for Hakeem Jeffries as he tries to move this caucus forward because, of course, he's younger, but he's a more traditional Democrat in that respect.
Listen, youth is good, particularly as we get older. We wish we had more youth. I wish I had more youth. At the same time, there's also an experience that comes with a bit of age, and certainly we saw with Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer. What about Hakeem Jeffries? What kind of experience does he have? What is he going to need to keep this somewhat fractious caucus together?
I was just looking back, and a lot of people say he has a fairly thin legislative record. He's more known for his style. He was the House impeachment manager who quoted Biggie Small, if I'm saying the name correctly, on the House floor.
Right.
And
most people didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, I have to say I didn't either, but I looked it up. But he's a very personable individual. He is a great politician. He's from Brooklyn, so New York, go into the leadership in Congress. But he's, in terms of a legislative record, again, you've seen progressives push back. They feel to a certain extent he is too moderate, too traditional. For instance, he is an opponent, just like Pelosi was, of the Green New Deal, something with progressives really hold very dear. So I do think we may see some, headbutting there. And also, don't forget that in this last election cycle, he joined with Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey, a very conservative member of the caucus, and he tried to fight off or fend off challenges to incumbents from the left part of the party, which really rankled a lot of progressives.
One last one, because you're a political science professor, and so you would have some perspective on this. It could be argued that, in fact, he's got to break Hakeem Jeffries because they're in a minority. It would be harder if he were going to be Speaker of the House right from the start.
It would. We keep saying he's got big heels to fill in terms of Nancy Pelosi, and that's true. But he does have the benefit of sort of getting his feet wet, if you will, as a minority leader and then moving up. So it's going to be a challenge, though, either way, because this is a very energetic young caucus he is going to be leading going forward.